Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's so good to be with you this evening. We're just so happy that we can spend the next couple of hours for strengthening resilience. My name is Kari McClelland, and the Ridge Meadows Community Action Table and its partners, School District 42, the Community Network, SD 42 District Parent Advisory Council, and the Seniors Network are excited to bring you Strengthening Resilience. Now, this is the third and final event in our Stigma, Trauma, and Resiliency series. We hope you enjoyed the first two events, the Us and Them documentary screening, dinner and dialogue, and Trauma and Mental Health Town Hall, which were brought to you before the COVID pandemic. Now, Us and Them and the Trauma Town Hall gave us an insight into how stigma and adverse childhood experience. Today, we're looking forward to hearing how we can move beyond these and build resilience in our community. Now, before we get too far down the track, it's really my honor and privilege to introduce Tracy Scott, who is an inspiring voice, a multidisciplinary artist, and just a huge community advocate, someone that we should all be thankful for. And with that, I'll bring Tracy forward to do our land acknowledgement. Tracy, just remember to unmute yourself.
You bet. You bet. Thank you, Kari. We would like to acknowledge that we gather on the traditional land of the Katzie and Kwantlen peoples, both past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the people that have stewarded it throughout all the generations. Okay, this calls us to commit to continuing to learn how to be better stewards of the land we inhabit as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. It's so great that we're able to see each other briefly in this forum. Tracy is just one of those people who, when you get a chance to be around them, you just feel better. You feel like you're getting a big warm hug, even if she's across the room, just knowing that she's there. So thanks again, Tracy. We're going to move forward, but first I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. Why I'm here. Us and Them, the documentary Dinner and Dialogue, I was the facilitator and host of that evening. And, I've just been really blessed and honored to be able to work with this organization and this group of people, the Ridge Meadows Community Action Table. They're doing such powerful work in community, and it really feels like a blessing to be able to just witness the way that they're working inside of community. It's a really inspiring thing to be a part of. And I know that, there's a little bit of shyness on the part of some of the members of the CAT. They don't want to come forward and toot their own horn, but I got to tell you, you all are very lucky to have these people as part of your community. And I understand that I'm really privileged to also walk alongside them. Myself, I'm a facilitator. I've done this for, over a decade. I'm also a musician, sing with a group called the Sojourners, also sing under my own name. And I've had the privilege of, traveling the world, really. I've performed and facilitated in Uganda, Egypt, all across Europe, Canada, all across the States. I've been to Australia, and I'm also from Detroit, and from a really small house that my grandmother paid $13,000 for in the 80s. And by Vancouver standards, that's not even a closet, right? But I'm aware of the journey from there to here. and I know about the role of resilience, not just in me, but in my family. And what I would put forward is that anyone who's listening right now, I want to just take a moment for you to actually think about your own journey, and maybe not even just your own journey, but the journey of your ancestors. And I just want to put forward that ancestors can mean a lot of different things for different people, because not everyone has a connection to their blood family, for various reasons. Some people have, they're adopted, they've been through foster care. Some people have been rejected by their families. A lot of my friends in the queer community have been rejected by their families. And so, for them, that biological meaning of ancestry doesn't really work for them. But how I extend that is I just think about who are the people who help to love you into existence. And when I put it that way, somehow it really works for me. And so, maybe that was a school teacher that one time that just like saw you and let you know that you were worthwhile, that you deserve to be here. Maybe it was a grandparent. I had a grandmother who just loved me. Didn't matter what I did. She just really loved me. I always knew there was a place at her table. And so, all of you that are watching, I just have this feeling that if you're here, part of why you're here is because somebody helped to love you into being who you are in this moment. And so I'm just going to ask us all to take one minute and just think about one person. I know there's probably many people, but just think about one person who really saw you, who cared for you, who nurtured you, who saw your capacity and beauty, honored you. And we're just going to take a second to just like bring that person to mind. And I'm going to give you a few seconds to do this. And see if we can't, maybe even just bring their name to your lips. And just as an exercise, I know maybe I'm just doing this by myself, but I'm just gonna take a leap and hope that maybe you'll join me in saying maybe that one person's name. Well, on the count of three. So I'll share my name on the count of three, and you all at home or wherever you are, maybe you can say a name too. So 1, 2, 3, Leona. I'm just going to let that sit on my heart for a second, Yeah. And that's another source of resiliency, remembering the road to how we got here. And, I really trust that if you're sitting here watching this video, wherever you are, you and your generations at some point in time have been through it. You've been through some rough spots, and the fact that you're here is a testament to resiliency. And so you're in the right place. And so whether you're watching and you're an elected official, whether you're just a neighbor that lives down the street, maybe you're an essential worker who lives in the community, maybe you have precarious housing, maybe you don't have a lot, maybe you feel a little bit outside. I just want you to know that you're in the right place. There's a seat for you at this table. And as I move forward, it's my distinct pleasure to introduce Sam Brad. And Sam is an incredible graphic facilitator from Drawing Change. His role is to listen deeply and translate your ideas into visuals. We all deserve to have better meetings, and Sam is passionate that creativity is a way to make that happen. He's collaborated with a wide range of groups, including community action tables, peers, the World Health Organization, and Google. He's a white settler and lives on unceded Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish territories. And with that, I would love to bring Sam forward. Sam, it's so good that we get to hang out a little bit tonight and that you're going to provide the community with these beautiful artistic renderings. Can you share a little bit with us?
Thank you so much, Kari, and thank you for making space at the table for all the people that I just feel like came in. I just want to say that, it feels like I'm here to draw, but actually, I feel like my job tonight is actually to like listen for the love and then put the love back out. And so that's going to be what I'm going to focus on tonight. And so I want to say hello, especially to all the artists out there. And so if you're somebody that doodles or you cook or you're a dancer, I just want you to know that art saved my life as a queer and trans person. I wouldn't be here without all of my ancestors, all the people that love me, and I wouldn't be here without art. So tonight I'm going to listen and draw. And what we're going to do is I'll show you what it's going to start like. It's going to look like this. Some keynotes. And here's Kari up here in the corner. And then this whole thing is going to fill up as we go along. So we'll check in at a couple points during the meeting. And then afterwards, the graphics will be shared also. So back to you. Thanks so much.
Yay. Thank you, Sam. I'm so excited. It's like with every minute that passes, I just get a little more excited. I had the opportunity before we started this event to check in with our next, who said I can just call her Jennifer, which I think is pretty nice. And Dr. Mervyn was acknowledged by CAMH as one of the 150 Canadians making a difference in mental health. She is a registered psychologist offering individual, family, and group counseling and mental health treatment. She has an extensive background in trauma and substance abuse and utilizes innovative, culturally informed therapeutic approaches in her work. Jennifer is Métis, a mother of 4, and a strong advocate for the Indigenous community. She consults, teaches, and trains in trauma-informed practice and policy nationwide. And what I want to share with you, which maybe it'll come out in this next slide presentation, but like Jennifer is real. She's a really deep-rooted and grounded person who has had a life journey. And I know that whatever information she's going to share with you, it's grounded in a deep knowing and wisdom. And so with that, I'm really honored to be able to welcome you forward, Jennifer. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much for having me tonight. I'm really grateful. I am just going to pull up slides. I'm looking on my sidebar here for them. I'll start by just saying it is a real privilege to be here tonight. And I'm actually coming from Semiahmoo, Kwantlen, and Tsawwassen First Nation territory. All right, everybody can see the slides perfect. And I'm going to use my remote clicker. First time for this. There we go. Wonderful. So I am excited tonight to talk to you about resilience. And if you joined us for the Trauma Town Hall, you might remember I've shared a little bit of my personal story. And I think Kari was alluding to our conversation we had just minutes before we began tonight. And that's that I do come by this work, not just, professionally for those reasons, but it touches my heart personally. I grew up in a home with parents that really struggled with mental health and addictions. And as the oldest of 3 girls in my home, we all ended up downtown Vancouver on the street at some point in our life, with my youngest sister really struggling and being the youngest out there at 11 years old. And so when I talk about resilience, I'm really talking about it in the face of trauma and building on our last town hall together. Resilience is our ability to become strong, healthier, successful, even after we faced trauma, even after we faced some really difficult things. And so tonight we're going to talk a little bit about how we do that, how we build resilience, and what that looks like in the face of toxic stress. So I want to talk a little bit about the different types of stress. We have positive stress. Tonight, some of our presenters, as we were getting ready, we might have felt like a little increase in our heart rate. I think I still feel mine now as we're presenting on Zoom. Feel my heart just zoom a little bit. And we might have some sweaty palms, a tight tummy, mild elevations in our stress hormones. That's positive stress. Positive stress sets us up to do well if we're going to run away, race, or take a test, present in front of an audience. Tolerable stress is when the stress is a lot more significant, where we're facing things that could potentially be quite traumatic. But what keeps it within the tolerable range is really if we are buffered by support and help. And we're going to talk about that in relation to resilience in just a little bit. But tolerable stress is potentially toxic stress, but that which is buffered and supported by those people around us and experiences. Toxic stress, and some people are saying, really COVID could be considered toxic stress for many of us right now. Toxic stress is what happens inside us. Toxic stress is what happens when we experience a change in our baseline, our heart rate. Instead of going back to normal after a period of time, it stays elevated. Those stress hormones, they don't come back to normal. We don't get that hug or that support or that comfort that we need. And we actually change where our body and our brain functions at on a more ongoing basis. And they say that really it takes about 6 weeks of elevated stress hormones, heart rate, that stress response to dysregulate us enough to change those baseline levels, and we recalibrate where we function at. Now, we need this amazing stress response to help us, because we will need it if we are facing that cougar. I just read, my husband sent me an article today. There was a woman in Agassiz, I think, that had to be airlifted after a cougar attack. It is scary when we are out there, and there was this news story from last summer. I'm not sure if you guys saw this, where a mom actually was able to save her 7-year-old son. He was being dragged under their back fence by a cougar attack. And let me tell you, her fight or flight, her stress response leapt into action. And it probably is the very thing that allowed her to have the superhuman strength, capacity, and tenacity in those moments to save her child. What happens when we go into this amazing fight or flight mode is that we engage our sympathetic nervous system. This is fight or flight. This is where our pupils actually dilate so that we can see at the back end of that yard. We can take in more visual information and cues to see exactly what's going on. Our mouths will get dry. We won't be able to have saliva in our mouth. I chew gum during a presentation because my mouth goes dry. It increases our heart rate. It constricts our blood vessels and increases our blood pressure. And it allows our bronchi to open up and dilate to take in more air into our lungs. It's incredible. It stops our capacity for digestion. It increases our blood flow to our skeletal muscles, allowing us to have more capacity and endurance. It actually increases our blood sugar. We have more blood glucose available to us for more strength and more energy. And it stimulates our adrenal glands to produce stress hormones so that we can actually have this huge burst of cortisol and adrenaline that gets us into gear to fight that cougar and save our child, and then run and be able to get out there. Without this stress response, we wouldn't have this capacity. So it's something that is built in and hardwired in us for good, that can do us a lot of good. What happens, or the challenges that happen, is that when we face toxic stress, when we feel like that cougar is present on a day-to-day basis, it actually changes the size and shape of our brain overall. It can shrink our hippocampus and enlarge our amygdala. And we really don't want this enlarged amygdala. It's super sensitive and detecting danger at every turn and corner. It's our smoke detector of our brain. It definitely plays a role in keeping us safe, but keeping it extra strong, hyperactive, can actually do us harm in the long run. So in addition to actually changing the physical structures of our brain, shrinking our hippocampus, enlarging our amygdala, our stress response center, it weakens the connections between these areas of our brain. So our brain connectivity is actually low. It really weakens connections between our prefrontal cortex, which is our slow, rational, logical thinking part of our brain, and our hippocampus. And it really weakens the connections between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. And we want to see a lot of traffic on this highway. It's important that we have integrated brain structures so that we're not spending too much time in that fight or flight zone, that we can calm down and think logically and rationally and calmly in a moment that we want it. We know that especially in the early years and in teenage years, we have these incredibly critical periods for our brains that are growing and developing. And these are times where our brain is clearing away what it's not using, and it is building or hardwiring in what we are using. And I want you to think about that in relation to right now. What are we building in the midst of this pandemic that is really causing our brains to feel anxious and scared and stressed? And if we are not taking the time to build resilient brains right now, that's what we're hardwiring. And in these critical stages for our young people, this is what they're building in, and they're clearing away their capacity for stress release and relaxation and calmness and impulse control. So it's really important that now more than ever, we're talking about this. But even in addition to the pandemic, you can only imagine the stressors our young people are facing: social media, bullying. There's lots of different things that our young people are facing that are potentially traumatic these days. The wonderful hope, you guys, is that neuroplasticity exists throughout our entire lifetime. Our brains have the possibility to change and to heal and to grow and to promote resilience at any age and at any stage. So there's so much hope here. It may be harder for us when we are older. That chance is always available to us. The most important piece in it is disengaging our stress response, disengaging our amygdala, our smoke detector, disengaging fight or flight, and activating resilience. So how do we do that? How do we activate resilience? Well, here's the amazing thing about our brain. How do we soothe the stress? Kari was just talking about having this little 5-month-old beautiful baby girl at home. And as anyone who's been a parent before may remember, that gentle rocking motion, that's what helps. It's because rocking offers this vestibular balance-related stimulation, this rhythm. If it's steady, if it's comfortably paced, it has a calming effect on the human nervous system and a regulating effect on the human brain. Incredible. So our brainstem is really what is experiencing this rhythmic movement. It regulates our brainstem. Our brainstem is one of the oldest parts of our brain. People call it the reptilian brain, and really because it is the first part that grows and develops, and it is the gateway of most of the transmissions to our other brain areas. Interestingly enough, it is also the site of where trauma or toxic stress is first processed. So if our brainstem is overwhelmed, a person can get stuck in a hypervigilant, high anxiety state instead of accessing those areas of our brain that we need for logic and reason and calming, those higher centers of our brain that we would find. Bruce Perry is really a leader in this area, and he recommends patterned, repetitive, body-based rhythmic methods, because these are what have the potential to quiet our hyperactive nervous system. It might also even impact the growth or development of the brainstem, healing, because sometimes we actually have delays in development because of toxic stress or trauma. So it might be incomplete. And these are the things that can actually help it grow and develop and encourage resilience and neuroplasticity. It's so interesting because I think a lot of us already engage in some activities, practices, traditions that provide this sense of body-based, patterned, rocking, rhythm, repetitive motion that's healing for our brainstem. And the key is tap into it. We all need to access that which we are already really finding so comforting, soothing, healing, and resilience building for our brains. It's different for everybody. And if you don't have something, I so encourage you to start exploring and finding out what fits for you, because these are the things truly that will help promote resilience in our brains. It's interesting for me. I'm a paddleboarder. I love horseback riding. I just bought bikes, so that's a brand new thing that I'm trying to do during COVID for the kids and I. But if you can find what is patterned, repetitive, rhythmic healing for you, these are the things that really help soothe that early part of growth in the brainstem. One of the methods that I never would have imagined taking on at this age in my life, but has been really fun, I have to say, overall, has been skateboarding. And it was a story of a young man who I work with, who asked me, again, they said, I'm not an office-based talker. I really don't think I'd feel comfortable doing counseling in an office. And I said, that's okay. We can go for walks. And we often did go for walks and talks. But he said, it would be so much easier. Like, there's something about being on my board that helps me talk and process. Like, I can think better. The ideas flow better. Like, if we can just be on wheels, that would really, really help me. And it so speaks to brain resilience. It so speaks to this part of him needing to be calmed and soothed before he can talk about the parts that were really difficult. And so for the last 2 years, as part of the therapy that I offer, is I go skateboarding. And it's so very interesting that this is one of the pieces that we know that can be soothing and healing for our brains and promoting resilience. Another piece is mindfulness. So slowing down, slowing our minds down so that we can pay attention on purpose. We know meditation is incredibly helpful. Whatever we can do to be able to be non-judgmental of our thoughts, to discover and strengthen our neural connections so that we can become aware. Engaging in mindfulness practice, meditation practice, we know that it can measurably improve different areas of our brain by as much as 25% in 8 weeks. And we know that experienced meditators, they actually have smaller amygdalas. So that center, that smoke detector response for fight or flight, is smaller in the brain. We have a lot to learn from them. Kari was mentioning this right before we were talking today, but man, can healing ever happen as a result of being in nature? It is incredible the number of studies that we have and the evidence for how much nature truly impacts our health and well-being overall. Not just our physical health and well-being. There's some great studies out there that say 120 minutes a week of being out in nature has a drastic improvement on our cardiovascular, on our capacity for regulating our blood sugar. Our blood glucose comes back down to normal in nature. It is incredible. And that's not just from exercising in nature. Some of this is just from being in nature. Just being out there in the forest, in front of the ocean, by a lake, by a stream. But if we can do as much as we can to build resilience by getting out into this beautiful place that we live in here in British Columbia, we would be so much further along our path of building resilience in our brains. We know there's so many different benefits. I've got a few bubbles here, tree bubbles, talking about the elderly, improving cognition, kids improving their motor strength, balance, coordination, mental health, things like anxiety, ADHD. These are the things that nature truly, truly benefits. And if we can get out there as much as possible, this is going to help promote resilience in us and in others. So I was looking at this. I was just talking to a client about this infographic this morning. They talk about 2 minutes of being in nature. Stress is relieved within minutes of exposure to nature. So muscle tension, blood pressure, and brain activity changes after 2 minutes, guys. 2 hours, you'll see memory performance and attention span improving 20% after spending an hour with interacting with nature. And after 2 days, our level of cancer-fighting white blood cells increased by 50%. 2 or more consecutive days in nature have the capacity to change our brain and our biology. It's so called for in our lives right now with the stress that we're facing, so that we do not have that as toxic stress. And for those of us who have a trauma history, we really need to be doing this for ourselves, for our wellness, and building resilient brains. It helps us feel better emotionally, contributes to physical well-being, heart rate, muscle tension, those things, production of stress hormones that are overactive or hyperactive for those of us who face too much toxic stress or trauma in our lives. So nature being the balm for our busy brains. One of the things that we need to consider is we need to talk about negative emotions. We need to share them. It doesn't have to be verbally. It could be through arts, whatever expression you choose, but we can't hold everything inside. We know that suppressing negative emotions could actually make things worse and contribute to toxic stress. Sharing these, accepting these, tolerating them from others, and managing and sharing our negative emotions, it can actually bolster resilience. So long as it is done in balance with experiencing our positive emotions, finding something to be positive about, even in these times of stress and strain, guys. Experiencing positive emotions such as compassion, forgiveness, it's a huge one right now, gratitude, love, humor, sense of purpose and meaning. It actually changes the structure and the function of the brain and the nature of all of our social relationships if we can share out the positive emotions that we are experiencing. And again, identifying and labeling our feelings is so very important. It doesn't matter what has happened to us. It does not matter what has happened to others. What really matters is our perceptions and others' perceptions of that. And it is so very important to help ourselves, for us and for others, to identify our emotional states, talk about them and express them so that we can really do something with those. And then promoting healthy coping habits, meditation, mindfulness, exercise, sleep routines, all that can come, but it starts with our feeling states and truly identifying what those are to begin with. Validating feelings and concerns. Right now, our stress levels are all running so very high. So it might seem like some people are overreacting over the smallest things. And I really encourage us all not to judge. It really matters what the person feels. That's what matters the most. And so we have to remember it's our own perceptions. The situation that we have nothing to, when someone feels like there's a situation that they have no control over, they might really feel like their safety, their life is at risk right now. We need to validate that. We don't need to agree with everybody to validate or see someone else's point of view as legitimate and validate that for them. It's the recognition, acceptance of another person's thoughts, feelings, sensations, and behaviors is understandable without us trying to fix them or problem solve for them. Just to listen and hear and be real and try to provide space. Just hold space for that other person to let them express how they feel. Establishing routines, thinking about what our daily routines are like to help us feel safe and secure. We need consistency. Doesn't matter what age we are. If you are a kindergartner and if you are 65, we do best, our brains function best with some routines. Find some morning routine ideas. Find something that you can do for your evening routine, but build routine and consistency into your life to promote resilience. And then lastly, I really have to say, this anchors the presentation tonight and all of what we know in terms of connection with mental health and with addictions, especially for young people, is that caring, connected relationships is still the single most protective factor for mental health and addictions. We know that if we're lonely, we feel rejected, our brain regions associated with distress and rumination are activated. And this does not promote a resilient brain. We see headlines like this all the time where mental disorders are 4 times higher amongst those who feel lonely. We need to consider loneliness and the role it's playing amongst people right now. We need to look at what we can do to combat our own loneliness. And wow, as we talk about the importance of community tonight, when we talk about what we can do to positively impact somebody else in their resilience promotion, we can target loneliness. We can help reach out, help people feel more connected so that they don't have to experience this. Social isolation and loneliness actually compromise our immune system. We're so worried about immune systems right now. We actually know that being a heavy smoker right, isn't as bad for your well-being as loneliness is. Loneliness contributes to heart disease, Alzheimer's, physical, mental health disorders. Really, loneliness is such a significant factor in our physical health and well-being and our mental health and well-being. When we look at some of the studies that have been done around isolation and loneliness, long before COVID, we sent teams of researchers to the Antarctic in these small teams, 9 people, and we measured their hippocampus before they left. We measured it when they returned, and we found that it lost size and volume. So they came back with smaller hippocampus than what they had left with. And how interesting is it that when we look back, when we think back to the beginning of my talk tonight, we looked at the hippocampus as being an area that was diminished in those that faced childhood adversity, trauma, and toxic stress. So we know the brain impacts of isolation and loneliness are significant and are mirroring that of other traumas and toxic stress. Loneliness can make us think crazy thoughts. We can think that nobody likes us, that we're actually not lovable or likable, that nobody's really there for us. We don't have any real friends or supports in our life. And it's not always true. We cannot believe everything that we think. It is so important right now to maintain social supports. If you know someone who is struggling, you have a friend or a family member. It is in the scariest time in my life having my baby sister still out there struggling with her opioid addiction in a time where we have a tainted drug supply and limited drug supply. It has been one of the scariest things. And I think there's sometimes when it's scary to reach out, it's scary to say, how are you doing? Because you sometimes you almost don't want to know. It's awful. And it's a time where more so than ever, we have to push through our fear. We have to push through our own stuff, and we need to maintain those social supports for us and for others, for those we care about and support, and for those we love. And then we also need to find ways that we connect with creativity. I went to my very first Kumo space party for one of my best friends. I am not technologically inclined. This is so not easy. I don't touch my computer mouse to change my slides instead of my phone. This is all new to me, but we have to find ways to break out of our shells, to push past our areas of comfort, and to connect creatively. And sometimes that's online, sometimes that's outdoors, but we just need to find different ways to connect with people because we know the brain benefits of connection. I really love this study that Stanford did because it really looked at oxytocin release and serotonin and this beautiful chain reaction. We have serotonin released in our brains by the reward circuitry of the nucleus accumbens. And it's only done when we connect with others. We only find this in connection. And in fact, they talk a little bit about flow state in the Stanford study about how we actually don't function. Our brains aren't as creative and flowing and productive as they could be all on our own in isolation, working individually. But our brains really function best, and they're their healthiest and they're their most resilient when we're connected to others. So I really just want to encourage people as I end tonight to choose compassion over judgment. We cannot make assumptions about other people's choices. We need to understand that everybody right now might be facing toxic stress. Everybody right now might be traumatized. Don't make assumptions and choices. Some may be, some may not, but we really need to be kind and compassionate. And it matters right now more than ever who we are being. So choose to be who you're going to be. Choose to be the parent you want to be, the friend you want to be, the community member, the neighbor, the person walking by that person on the street. Choose who you want to be right now and choose to build resilience in yourself and in others in your community.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. That was amazing. I feel like so much for the toolkit. I feel like some things that I definitely want to try are to bring more routine into my life and to actually more deeply listen to the people that are inside my home. It's easy with the people who are closest to us to take them for granted sometimes. I sometimes hear that I'm a better listener when I'm facilitating than when I'm at home, just, being a husband and a dad. And so I think this is really a call for us to really check into how we're connecting with ourselves and with others. And so I'm so grateful to you for all of what you've offered. And we're all fighting, these cougars metaphorically, the pandemic and the overdose crisis and this isolation. And so grateful to you again, and look forward to speaking to you later on the panel. So thanks, Jennifer. And with that, I think we should check in with Sam and see where we're at with this artistic rendering. Oh, wow. Fantastic.
Thanks so much. And so, yeah, just a couple of highlights. So looking at what part of our brain might change, some of the coping skills that we can remember. The idea of body-based, creative, connecting to different people. And I'll keep connecting to these ideas as we go along. So the image will keep growing. Back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. This is nourishing. This is the sort of nourishment that I think Jennifer was referring to. And I kind of made the joke that, this is like, we're just squares on a screen. But in these times, this feels like nourishment. This feels like connection, and it's important and it's powerful. And someone who's doing really powerful connecting work, specifically looking at the lives and experiences of Indigenous folks and youth, is Dwight Valentine, who grew up in Montreal Lake Cree Nation, a remote North Saskatchewan First Nation, until the age of 21. He always felt that he was invisible to the rest of the world that existed outside of his community. When a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to move to BC presented itself in 2016, he took a leap of faith and left everything he knew behind. And once he had a chance to adjust to his new lifestyle, he realized that many of the new people he met did not even know what a reserve was. This realization instilled a desire to find a way to bridge the gap between remote Indigenous communities and the rest of Canada. And he is in the rare position to offer his audience an opportunity to understand a segment of Canada's population that rarely makes it into textbooks, popular media, or social conversation. In 2020, Dwight decided to create presentations for educators and administrators to use to complement Indigenous curriculum content. He soon discovered that when he shares his story with youth in urban settings, they're genuinely interested to learn how his life has been so completely different from theirs. And so with that, I'm so excited to introduce a video that explains a little bit of Dwight's journey. And later on, we're going to hear from Dwight as he joins our panel discussion. So let's listen to this video and look at this video.
My name is Dwight Valentine, and I grew up in Montreal Lake Cree Nation, a remote reserve in northern Saskatchewan until the age of 21. Living in the res, I had always wanted to do something for myself. I would chill and talk with my boys about what it would be like to live somewhere else, trying to imagine what it would be like to leave the res and see what we could accomplish. The opportunity never came, and everything just stayed the same. As we all got older, it became harder to not feel stuck. There were times that I felt hopeless and depressed. The goals I had planned for myself started to seem pointless until one opportunity appeared. The next part of my story was actually the hard part. The thought of leaving sounded very exciting until it was actually happening. I was on my way to the airport to catch my first airplane ride that would take me to BC. I was anxious and my body started to shake the closer I got to the airport. I wondered if I could actually go through with it. I wondered if I could actually leave everyone and everything I had ever known behind for a life I want for myself. I remember when I was in the res, I liked to uplift and motivate my family and friends. After all my speeches I gave to them, I tried to remember my own words. So I forced myself to put one foot in front of the other until I made it past the airport security. Once I made it through, I knew it was a point of no return from there. At first it was fun and exciting to start my new life, but after a year or so, the new feeling wore off and it just started to be confusing. The loneliness was the worst part, and sometimes I felt like I wanted to go back home. But I tried to stay focused and to remember why I'd chosen this life. For me, hockey was my escape. It was my escape from reality and it gave me joy. It was also a way for me to connect and make new friends. The gym was also my therapy during the days. The gym gave me a sense of self-confidence and control. When I was in the gym, I could focus on myself and I could control my thoughts. It also helped clear my mind and focus on my body and mental health rather than the negative thoughts. As I felt my body grow stronger, I could feel myself getting mentally stronger as well. In the past 5 years, I have discovered that there are things that I need to do to keep myself moving forward. I needed a routine that gave me a sense of accomplishment and confidence. For me, this was going to the gym. I learned I need to try new things and force myself into uncomfortable situations. It doesn't matter if I fail because no matter what the outcome is, I am growing as a person. When negative thoughts start to take over, or I start feeling overwhelmed, I try to focus on the little things that make me feel good or in control. I work on making connections and surrounding myself with people who push me and encourage me the same way I encourage them. I do all of this because I remember what it was like to feel stuck and sometimes hopeless in my life. I remember what it was like to want to do something different with my life, but the opportunity never came my way. I faced many challenges and barriers that other kids who grew up in different areas of Canada will never know or understand. But also, those are the things that make me determined and make me push forward every day.
3, 2, 1.
Thank you, Dwight. What an inspiring video. What an inspiring young man. We're so lucky to have you here tonight. Now, next up is Monique Gray-Smith. And before I, sort of read the scripted bio, I just want to say this is a person who, I don't know, you just feel a sense of grounding being in their presence. There's a kindness, there's a deep listening. There's a wisdom that you feel, even when Monique isn't speaking. But Monique is a proud mom of teenage twins and an award-winning best-selling author. Her first published novel, Tilly, A Story of Hope and Resilience, won the 2014 Canadian Burt Award for First Nation, Métis, and Inuit literature. Since then, Monique has had 6 books come out and that cover a broad spectrum of ages, topics, and emotions. Woven into all of Monique's writing, speaking engagements, and online courses is the teaching that love is medicine. Monique's novel, Tilly and the Crazy Eights, was longlisted for Canada Reads 2021. Monique is well known for her contributions to the journey of truth and reconciliation, including being honored with the 2019 City of Victoria Leadership Award for Reconciliation. She is an appointed member of the Board of Directors of Royal Roads University and the Ministers Advisory Council for Indigenous Women for the Government of BC. Monique is Cree, Lakota, and Scottish, and has been sober and involved in her healing journey for over 29 years. She is well known for her storytelling, spirit of generosity, and focus of resilience. I'm so honored and pleased that you can be with us tonight. Monique.
Kininaskomoten, thank you. I appreciate that. Tansi and Dotimak, Mitanina Naskamon, Kininaskomoten to the Lekwungen speaking people, the Kosapsim and the Songhees people, and the Wasanich people whose territory I'm coming to you from today, also known as Victoria, British Columbia. I am the granddaughter of Noel Shavetail on my mom's side. He was adopted at 4 by Frank Cardinal and Mary Fayant from Papikassees. And my grandmother was Isabel Gray. And on my dad's side, I'm the granddaughter of Raymond Smith and Beatrice Johnstone. And as was said, I have twins who are graduating this year. It feels like a blink of an eye, and here we are. And I just realized, last Monday, that my bio is a little out because last Monday was my 30-year sobriety birthday. And it's just like Dr. Jennifer and like Kari talked about, many of us who come to this work about resilience and trauma do so because of what we have experienced in our own lives, that it has become like a calling in some ways. So I'm going to share with you a cultural resilience model I developed called the 4 Blankets of Resilience. But I want to start by reading a piece. I wasn't going to read this, but then, when you started us, Kari, I wrote it down because it was so beautiful. Who are the people who helped love you into existence? Oh, I got teary, and I'm going to talk about cookie people, but that's really who they are, these people who love us into existence. And for me, when I look back on my life, sometimes they've been people who've come in just for a shadow of a moment of time, and they've altered my trajectory because they see me, right? Or sometimes they're people who walk our path almost our whole life. So thank you for that beautiful way to talk about the people who love us and who help to raise us up. So I'm going to read from Tilly. This was the novel that Kari referenced, the first novel I had come out. And in this scene, we meet Tilly when she's 11. And we get a sense of her relationship with her grandma, who she's named after, Grandma Tilly, both when Grandma comes to Kamloops to visit and then when Grandma goes home to her community in Saskatchewan. So in this reading, I reference party lines. Some of you will remember the old telephone party lines in communities where there would have been one phone line in, and we would have had phones in our houses, on the wall. My mom had a gossip bench where our phone sat, They weren't tucked in our bras or in our back pockets. And when you lifted up the receiver, this little button came up that connected you to that line. And so if Kari and I were on the phone visiting and Jennifer picked up the phone in her house, she'd hear our conversation. But we would have heard the click, so we would have known. But there was people who knew that if you kept your finger down and slowly lifted that button, that we might not hear the click. I think, we were ahead of our time. That was actually the first form of social media, was the party lines. And so that's the reference to party line in this short reading. During her visits, Grandma Tilly taught me about being generous, telling the truth, and always treating other people with dignity and respect. Every night after dinner, she and I would sit outside and she'd pull out her pipe bag and load her pipe for her evening smoke. Come here, little Tilly, gather under my wing, and let's talk about the day. With me tucked up close to her, we'd review our escapades, and she'd ask me, what did you learn today, and what was the best part? I missed her so much once she'd gone home, but Grandma Tilly made a point of staying in touch by phone. She was on a party line, and it was common to be on a call with her and have someone cut in. Who's on the line? The person would ask. It's Tilly, and I'm on with little Tilly, and we're going to be a while. Once when I called her to talk about some things I was upset about at school, she told me, what you got to remember, Tilly, is that everyone's born with love in their hearts. Sometimes life takes that away, but we're all born with it. So whenever you enter a room, in your imagination, fill it with love and make enough room for everyone else to fill that room with love too. That, my girl, is when good things happen. I always felt better after my talks with Grandma Tilly. Her teachings, words, and sayings were like medicine to me. I carried them in my heart to help me feel strong, and they reminded me of the powerful woman I was named after. So I read that short piece because in there Grandma Tilly shares so much wisdom, and nowhere in there explicitly do we talk about resilience. But it is about resilience, about filling a space with love. You know, Dr. Jennifer talked about this sense of hypervigilance and hyperarousal, that if we're experiencing trauma, we can feel the energy in a space when we walk in. That's why sometimes people come into your home or to your office and they're like, oh, I just want to sit here for a while, because they can feel the love in the space. And we need a lot of that medicine right now. As well, you know, she asked Tilly, what did you learn today? What was the best part of your day? So that when we reflect on our day and we recalibrate, we're looking at what were the best parts, instead of getting triggered into what were the perhaps not so positive parts or the traumatic parts, and then having all those chemicals that Dr. Jennifer talked about released again. As well in there, she talked about, you know, that sometimes we experience things that can take some of the love away, and that we have to fill it ourselves and with the people we have in our lives, as well as the places we go. You know, for me, my dad got very sick a few months ago, and he passed away just a couple of weeks ago. And for me, the forest, I'm just a block and a half from this beautiful forest called Cowells, also known as Mount Doug Park. And it's been my place of medicine. You know, there's these huge cedar trees in there that have witnessed so many of my tears and my rage. And they've also witnessed when I've been for walks with my family and friends, the laughter, the stories. And I know that I'm only one person that has dropped emotions at their roots for them to soak up so that I can feel better. So I really love how Jennifer talked about the importance of being outside and being in nature. And if that might not be possible, if you have a plant, even sitting beside the plant or putting something up that's just beautiful about nature that will just help to recalibrate. And you know, about 28 years ago, I was in a isolated community in Northern Ontario, and I was doing a 5-day youth workshop. And on the third day, I was packing up my belongings after we had done the day. And one of the young women came back in the room, and she said to me, "Can I talk to you?" Barely audible, she asked, "Can I talk to you?" I was like, "Of course." So I sat down on the couch and faced her, and it was awkward for a few minutes because it was quiet. And I knew that if I started to talk, that I'd fill the space. And that's not what she asked. She didn't say, "Can you talk to me?" She said, "Can I talk to you?" To the silence. And then she began to talk, and she talked for 2 hours. And many times as she was sharing, I was thinking to myself, how are you even alive? And when she was done, I had been doing all kinds of research about resilience in the Western world and in an academic construct. But my question to her was, you know, when things were really hard, where did you go? And her face lit up just a little bit, and she said, "I'd go out to the goose camp, and I'd light the fire, and I'd find a stick and I'd poke at the fire, and I'd remember the conversations that had happened around the fire." And then I said, "And who would you go visit?" And her face lit up a little bit more. And she said, "I'd go visit my auntie." And then she told me about her auntie. And that was really my beginning of my journey to look at resilience through a cultural lens. You know, as an Ihiosqueo, as a Cree woman, thinking about what does it mean to me, through my life's experience, the experience of my ancestors, the experiences of my children, to be resilient. And I think about it, you know, if I had an image here that was a dream catcher made out of red willow, that if that dream catcher got taken apart, that red willow would bounce back almost to its original shape, but changed forever. And red willow is also often used as the backbone or the rib cages in our sweat lodges because it can bend, and rarely does it snap, just like us. And so I think about, you know, it really began my journey thinking about how do we foster resilience? And I really reflected a lot on my own life, and I thought about that for me, and when I think about it, the first blanket, there's 4 blankets. The first blanket is this strong sense of self. And many times that's the most profound healing for a lot of people, is who am I? Where am I from? And it's like Kari talked about at the very beginning of our sessions, individuals may not know some of those answers. And so it's the family we love. It may not be our biological family. It's the family that we love and who love us. Who am I? Where am I from? What is the language or languages that run through my blood? What's the land and the water and the stars that I'm connected to? And really, in so many ways, it's about identity and how I choose to identify myself and how people choose to identify me as well. And, I think back to in 2015 at the closing ceremonies for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, now Senator, but then the chair of the commission, Murray Sinclair, said 7 generations left residential schools not being able to answer, who am I? Where am I from? Why am I here? And where am I going? So that's really this first blanket. Who am I? Where am I from? Why am I here? What are the gifts I've been blessed with? And what is my work? Right? And we all come to learn this at different times. When I was in treatment at Round Lake Treatment Center, I was given my traditional name by Uncle Malvin. They came from the Dakotas to do a Yuwipi ceremony. And that name is Mistikwashki Ghost, which means little drum. And he said, we don't give you this name because your stature, like I'm only like 5'1". He's like, you're not a big drum. He said, but because one of the gifts, part of the bundle you come into the world with is this gift to remind people of their heartbeat. It's that rhythm piece that Jennifer talked about earlier. And when we're in utero, when we're tiny little babies and our ears are developing, the first sound we hear is that double beat of our mother's heart. And so for me, that's part of my identity. Why am I here? And where am I going? Speaking the future for each other. And then the second blanket that wraps around is our sense of family. And again, that can for sure be our biological family. And it can be our family of choice, those who we love and those who love us. And I think that's part of, when Jennifer talked about isolation right now, this is one of our risks, is that our connection to family, especially the elders in our families, or those who may be vulnerable for whatever reasons or identify themselves as vulnerable for whatever reasons, there may be less connection. And so it puts perhaps a greater risk of their inability to bounce back. And that's why, the love letters, the phone calls, even the quiet, as Kari said at the very beginning, and he counted us down to 3 and we said that person's name. And he's so present. And so I feel like that's one way we can still connect with people. It's just in quiet time to send them love, to send them prayers, to send them good wishes, to send them energy. And then the third blanket that then wraps around is our sense of community. And that's why I love, that this is being done and that there's continued fostering of community. Because one of the things that community provides for us is a sense of belonging. And all of us as human beings have a need to feel like we belong somewhere. And if we don't feel that, sometimes our moral compass gets out of balance. And we may do or say or act in certain ways that might not actually be in integrity for us. But because we're not feeling connected, because we're not feeling part of a community, because we don't feel like we belong, our moral compass might be out of balance. And then the fourth blanket that really weaves them all together is culture and language. And for sure, I'm speaking from, a Nihiwasquea, from a Cree woman's perspective, but we all come with a culture. Sometimes people might have to look a ways back to figure out what that is, but we all come with a culture. And for me, part of that is language as well. My niece was just profiled today in a beautiful article about the work she's doing to revitalize the Sikh language up in the Okanagan. And I was texting her saying, she's just come alive this year. Her eyes look different. She looks different. And I was saying, last summer when I was taking language classes, like that's how I felt. Like I literally felt like my body pulsed in a different way. And so when we look at culture and language and that blanket that weaves resilience all together, it's like, what does that mean for me? Right? What is the food? Where's the land? What's the stories? What's the sense of humor? It's one of the things that we don't often talk about, but our ability to be resilient is often that we have a sense of humor, that we are playful, that we can experience joy. I think about this history in this place we call Canada, and that many of those legislative decisions that have happened in Canada that have impacted us as Indigenous people and impacted the relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. That's why, the Valentine Project is so important, because it's fostering this understanding and this moving forward and a relationship renewal. That those decisions, those legislative decisions, were like clouds over our North Star. And in order to be resilient, we have to have a North Star. And for me, it's love and joy. And so sometimes our work to be resilient is, how do we move those clouds? For me as an Indigenous person, it has been not the 60 scoop, it was for my mom, the 40 scoop being removed at birth. A journey through alcoholism starting at 11 for me, childhood trauma. There are a number of things that were those clouds, and that's my work, to help move them in hopes that my children or the grandchildren or my nieces may not experience the same traumas. And so those 4 blankets are ways that we can bounce back, that we can be resilient. The strong sense of self, a connectedness to family, connectedness to community, and to culture and to language, which also can be about the land and the water and the stars. So even, people say, I don't have a sense of culture, I don't have a sense of language. To think about where you live now and the beauty of the land and the water that surrounds you, the air, the stars you see, and that those can be grounding places for you in regards to culture and language. And when I think about my own resilience, for sure that it's been about the cookie people who have come into my life. Those people who, when I'm in their presence, I feel bigger and better about myself. And I don't mean about ego, but just like how Kari described earlier, they see us, they hold us up, they help speak the future for us so that all kinds of things can unfold when it's in our right and when it's in our greater good. People come into our paths, books come into our paths, stories come into our paths, evenings come into our paths, people come into our paths that help to foster our resilience. And so for me, one of those has been my Auntie Ellen. And I can remember I was 12 years old and I played a lot of sports as kids. That was part of my resilience for sure. And she picked me up from an evening practice. It was a cold February day. We were practicing in the gym in Kamloops. It was like minus 25, when you step outside and your nose freezes. And it was a cold night. And we were driving home. And along the street, there was a woman who was obviously unhoused, unsheltered. And my auntie said, "Oh, there's Bonnie." And she pulled over and she said to me, "Give me your coat and give me your hat." I was in a single parent home and my winter jacket was a pretty precious commodity. But I don't know about you, but when I was taught when your auntie tells you to do something or ask something, you do it. So I took off my winter jacket and my toque, and she took off her boots and her gloves, and she took $20 out of her wallet. That was 1982. That was a lot of money. I still think $20 is a lot of money, but and she got out and she dressed Bonnie in all of our clothes, showed her the $20 bill, tucked it in her pocket, kissed her on the cheek, and got back in the car, and we drove home. Now, I didn't have this word at the time about humanity, but that was the most profound and beautiful act of humanity I'd ever seen. And I think about when we witness acts of humanity like that it fosters our own resilience. Because when I saw that, I wanted to be a better human. And of course, I didn't graduate. I had to go back to get my grade 12. And so, of course, when it was time to choose my post-secondary, I went on to be a psychiatric nurse, just like my Auntie Ellen. And so those cookie people that Kari started so eloquently, I want to read this again. Who are the people who helped love you into existence? Those cookie people, may you remember them. May you think of them. May you reach out to them. May you take some time to reflect on how they have impacted you. Because I think in those quiet moments of reflection like that, and of love and of awe, that it bolsters our own resilience. And so that's, a quick summary of the 4 blankets and of cookie people and of love, and just thinking about the beauty of even Zoom, us being able to come together like this tonight. So I offer thanksgiving and look forward to joining everyone later on in the panel, and turn it right back over to you, Kari. Thank you.
What a blessing you are. What a blessing you are. I sometimes, what you reminded me of is how when we have the right frame of mind, we can see the blessings that are all around us. I love this idea of connecting to self, who am I, family, community, and culture, as a way to be reminded of the 1,000 blessings that are bestowed upon us so regularly. It's almost like raindrops, when we're in the right place to recognize it. So thank you so much, Monique. We will see you shortly on the guest panel. And we're just going to check in quickly again with Sam, who's been keeping track of everything. Where are we at, Sam?
Yeah, so I began drawing when Monique was speaking over here, and from the books comes this swirl of hearts and this idea of filling a space with love, and then all of these tiny dots spread into the drawing. And so it goes into listening and noticing strengths in each other, and then the 4 blankets on this side, and these gentle reminders, like when things were hard, where did you go? So the idea of wrapping ourselves in the blankets, I think I'm going to continue those swirls now into the panelists that are coming on this side of the page.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much, Monique, for these teachings. My goodness.
Yeah.
It is a blessing.
Yeah, so much gratitude. I was definitely in tears, and I don't know if it's all right for me to claim this, but I was definitely like, oh, I feel like Auntie Ellen is one of my ancestors now. Like she's touched me profoundly. She's like shifted what I think is possible for me as a human being in some way by you telling that story. And I had to, because I'm the host, I had to choke back some tears. But let me tell you, offer of redemption. When she sees Bonnie on the side of the road and she hands her those offerings, and whether you're a Christian or not, there's the story of, like Jesus, like, yes, getting down and washing people's feet. That's kind of what it feels like to me. It's this act of humility to not say, I'm not better than you. I'm not bigger or better than you. You deserve love just like I do. And yeah, Auntie Ellen, she's with me. Now we're going to switch into panel mode. And as we do that, I want to actually encourage you, if you don't already have what you're viewing in full screen, to do that now, because that will enable you to see a chat window or a Q&A window that will pop up, and you'll be able to offer questions to the panel. So this is the Q&A section. And so we're really excited to be able to interact with you at home. You've been patient in terms of just witnessing and listening. And now is your opportunity to contribute in a different way. And so we're excited to be able to connect with you and communicate with you. You've already been introduced to Cole and Dwight and Jennifer and Monique, but there's somebody you haven't met yet, and that is Chad Cowells. And Chad is the manager of the Community Social Safety Initiative for the city of Maple Ridge for 18 years. In Vancouver and Maple Ridge, Chad has been leading teams of frontline responders, working with individuals and communities affected by housing shortages, the opioid crisis, and mental health challenges. Our team is built on a humanist approach, relationship building, and community networks. On the side, Chad runs a basketball charity for at-risk youth called Night. Thanks so much, Chad. I feel like you're going to really bring something that, you're on the front lines, and you're somebody who witnesses so much of what other people, I don't know if it's fortunate or not, but they don't have to deal with some of the things that you have to deal with on a regular basis. And so for that, just like all of the essential workers who are out there in the world, who are on the front lines, especially at this time, I just want to give you a big, huge, hearty thank you. You're so appreciated. And so with that, I just want to ask a question, and I hope it's okay to start with you, Chad. I'd love to just ask the question, with your experience, seeing what you've seen, what are some things, and obviously having seen and observed so many wise offerings from the four contributors who preceded you, what are some of the steps that you know to be true in terms of building strength and resilience in individuals and in communities? Love to hear from you.
Thank you, Kari. What a pleasure it is to be a part of this group here to talk about resiliency. And, I'm really quite honored to hear our speakers and hear the experience from the panel, in dealing with some very challenging social issues on the front lines. As mentioned, I sort of cut my teeth, so to speak, in the downtown east side as a park ranger. So I got on thinking I'd be doing wildlife rescue and patrol the seawall on my bicycle. And around 06, 07, we were hit so hard by the opioid crisis and became essentially social workers on the front lines. And I learned some hard lessons, I'll be honest. My team of rangers at the time wasn't prepared, for the level of trauma that we were about to be exposed to. And I learned some hard lessons about secondary trauma, tertiary trauma, felt by the frontline staff, their supervisors, and the real significant importance of having outlets, having abilities to share the weight that's being carried by the community. So when I came to Maple Ridge, I really had a chance to build this community safety team from scratch and redefine how we engage with the vulnerable sector. So, far from being a token uniform, we've taken a far different approach now that, as you mentioned, is based in a humanist approach, respect, looking people in the eyes, learning their names. And quite often we are dealing with the individuals that have truly fallen through the cracks, that are having challenges advocating for themselves and for housing, for addiction services, for mental health concerns. And so we're the first ones they see in the morning, most often. And so it starts with a good morning. And what we have our community safety officers do usually is just start with a simple needs assessment. Like, is there anything you need today? Is there anything we can do to help you? And that varies widely. In some of the wet seasons, it's amazing to, it's very obvious that simple things are critically important, like dry socks. Or right here is a mat built from recycled plastic bags. Our receptionist at the city of Maple Ridge tore strips off of bags, and she really wanted my team to deliver this to somebody who's sleeping on the concrete. And surely we will do that for her and for the individual we find. And then for the more complex issues, that's why groups like the Community Action Table are so critical. For me to say, team, I've got somebody who has needs that are far beyond my expertise. Help, please, because this person is in real need right now. And so, I take it as a gift to be able to engage with these individuals on a daily basis. As hard as it is, it's real work. It's impactful, and I don't let my team forget the gravity of the situation. That if they can help somebody get onto a healthier pathway, this can be life-saving. And I think the inspiring words by the two doctors on our panel here are just proof of what can happen when you save a person's life, or help them save their own life, or just care, just give a darn. Whatever the simple needs they have, we're going to try and deliver it. So that's where we start, and it's very dynamic. It evolves from there, and people's needs are dynamic and evolve, and it's about people who care, and the city, the RCMP, the engineering, parks, planning, they all help me on this community safety plan to ensure that the community is served at all levels. So I'm not a one-man team, but the city of Maple Ridge has invested heavily in this community, and we want there to be real results. So there's my short story long for you.
That's so great. And I really take away from what you shared, this notion of how just meeting someone's eye, a willingness to really truly connect. I feel like this really just it's undervalued in our society. I think we've become a very material-based culture in society, one that values less relationships and more about material exchange. And so I think there's this really powerful reflection that you offer when you say something as simple as just showing up and being there with someone and listening and caring. And this is the same thing that I heard with Auntie Ellen, right? It's the same thing that I hear in Jennifer's talk, this idea about genuine connection. And we don't know the outcome for everyone. And it is possible that we don't know that we're going to see that person again, or that they'll even be alive. But we can know that we offered some humanity, some love, some kindness and generosity. And no matter where we're at in our lives, when someone does that for us, it really it opens us up a sense of possibility for who we can be inside ourselves. And so I just want to say thank you again so much, Chad. And with this next question, I just want to turn it to the youth, to Cole maybe first, and then maybe to Dwight. And that is, what are some of the things that maybe adults and community officials could be offering to youth to help them in their journeys to build resiliency? What do you think youth might want or need to be able to be resilient in these times, Cole?
I think it's very important to keep yourself grounded wherever you're staying, whether it be with family, friends, or even alone. And it's good to keep hobbies and habits and little tics and stuff that you continuously do that make you feel comfortable and at home wherever you are. Like for me, I like to have like I always have my watch on so I can always tell the time, or I'll always bring a belt, kind of things like that, like little ticks and rhythms that I have. I like to keep those, and they help me keep at home and stay at focus.
That's great. That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Cole. And Dwight, again, at more of a kind of community or systems level, what do you think are some things that youth and communities could use when you think about your time in the city or on reserve? What were some things that could have been there that would have really helped young people?
First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much, Kari, for inviting me to this event. And we have some amazing speakers here, and I love the stories, and seeing all of us as a community come together. It's very lovely. It makes me feel very welcomed in my own way too. So it makes me feel warm to know that we're all vulnerable as human beings and we're able to share our messages. So with that being said, I mean, where I come from my own personal experience, we have so many barriers and challenges where I come from. So I never had opportunities to like go do this or do that with my own life. But I want to talk about the urban side here, because there's a lot of people who are young that I play hockey with and, talk to as well too. And so they seem lost too, like First Nations people and urban setting people, because there's a lot of stuff that goes on in life and you can't control every little aspect of it. But, I would say for me, what works from my perspective would be like, find something that works for you. Like for me, mine was hockey. Like when I was depressed or feeling hopeless, hockey was my thing. And it was just like something that made me feel good. Like find stuff that you're good at. And it's like, you will never know what you're good at until you try different things in life. So that's the kind of philosophy that I have in my mind to like, okay, if I feel stuck or I feel lost in my own ways, it's like, okay, Dwight, let's go out there, just dip your feet in the water, try something new, something you might never tried before. Ask a friend what to suggest. So, for me, when I was in my res, I used to write a lot of poetry. I used to write rhymes because that was very good for me because they were like dark rhymes, but it just made me feel good to express what I was feeling at that moment. I didn't want to show too many people about what I was writing because, I'd get judged about it. And so I kept it to myself. But if I wrote about what I felt, little hobbies and trying different things, it'd be a first step to finding out who you really are. Because for me, when I first came here, I felt lost. I was in a white world and I was meeting a bunch of different people with different backgrounds, and like, I didn't really know, I didn't fit in. So I needed to make connections and make friends who had the same interests. So, but it's very hard for some youth these days to like get out because they, like some people like to stay inside and some people have that social anxiety of doing this and that. So I would suggest maybe just dipping your feet into the water and trying little different hobbies that may or may not suit you. Like there's a lot of stuff out there. I don't know what youth like these days, but for me, like whenever I feel stuck, I still feel young, like, I still have these moments of like, how can I keep myself mentally strong because I'm away from my family? But if I just keep doing my work and like keep trying different hobbies or stay consistent with what I think is good for my own mind, then I think you could go a long way with all of that. But I would say, like Cole said, with hobbies, find certain hobbies that fit for you and find whatever works for you, because that's what youth struggle to find these days. And, I see firsthand to myself because it's just the way it is sometimes, but I don't know. I can only speak from my own perspective. I don't speak from anybody else, but I would say, don't be scared to try new things because you never know that new thing might be the greatest thing you've ever done. Like it's just little things. Like for me, I just picked up a guitar 6 months ago. I still suck at it, but it keeps my mind, like it takes me out of this world and it makes me know that learning something, and I don't have to worry about my negative thoughts or this big cloud of something that I think about, because I have bad thoughts sometimes, you know, like I don't like having those, but if I can keep myself grounded, like with just, you know, like writing or just guitar, you know, my mind is free, and it makes me like just calm. Like it's always good to stay calm in situations, and sometimes it's hard for some youth to stay calm in these situations, especially living in a big city like this. I was very, very overwhelmed, but you know, I just found little things that worked for me. So if you could find something that works for you, you know, talk to a friend. Don't be scared to open up emotions, because that was the first thing that I was scared of. I thought nobody cared about what I thought, or I thought that people didn't really care about who I was, just because it's your mind is a crazy thing. If you think negative thoughts, you're going to believe it. So you have to try your best to stay open to realize what's really out there. And at the end of the day, like the truth is, it's all up to you to put that next foot ahead of yourself. And that's just from my experience, and that's the best of my ability that I could probably answer it. But yeah, I could talk a lot more, but I'll stick with that.
That was fantastic, Dwight. You offered so many wisdoms and offerings, and Cole, you as well. I feel like you both echoed each other in terms of, you know, youth really needing opportunities to try different things, to try different sports, different hobbies, different activities, to find ways to express what's inside for them mentally and emotionally, to be able to express that. And arts is like an incredible way to do that. Having community, having friends. And so if there are people in the community who are witnessing this right now, I want you to hear these young people telling you what they need. And like what Chad shared was like, oh, there are people who have slipped through the cracks. And like what I understand about that is that there are so many young people who have been failed. And now you see them on the downtown east side, or you see them on the street somewhere, and then you maybe have a judgment about them. But these are actually all our children. Like that's my understanding. These are our children. And when one of them has failed, we all have to take on some responsibility for that. And so whether it's community centers, whether it's providing opportunities for sports, activities after school, I just want community leaders who are on this call to really think about that and how that can really create opportunities for youth. We've got one last question. We're coming to a close here. But I guess what I wanted to ask, and maybe this to Jennifer and Monique, what are examples of resiliency building initiatives that can be implemented at a community level that you have witnessed? You know, I know that you'll have some really wonderful offerings to share. And maybe we'll start with Jennifer, and then we'll go to Monique, and then maybe I'll sing a song. We don't know. Let's see.
So I think I'm a really big fan of peer support programs. I believe the work that we're doing in terms of promoting peer support workers, parent peer support, youth peer support, mental health and addictions peer support in things like the Foundry. I love the offerings that we're doing right in hospital, in psychiatric units inside the hospital. We're providing youth to youth peer supports. Just like Dwight was talking about, you know, youth sometimes question, do I even have something to offer? What is the purpose of this pain that I've been through in my life? And when we can offer them opportunities to be able to actually make meaning out of that pain and find purpose in the pain and offer something different for another youth, or inform a system or identify or a gap and a barrier that might lead to some systems change, that to me is so beautiful in terms of providing those opportunities for resilience.
Thank you, Jennifer. We'll pass it on over.
Years ago, when I was living in Kamloops, I was part of this program called the Friends Program. And it was started by two gentlemen, Doug Broadfoot and, oh my gosh, his name just left me. It will come. It was a program where, as a young adult, I still think I'm young. You were saying, you know, when I was younger, Dwight, I'm like, I'm still young. But As a young adult, we had young people, 15 to 19 years old, one person come and live with us. And we were roommates. And our role was to role model how to budget, how to get groceries, how to do your laundry, all those things, so that when it was time for them to transition out of their home, out of our home, they were ready. Because many of them, the foster homes didn't land for them, and their own personal homes weren't safe. And so we were like a bridge. His name was Wally. His last name will still come because I want to pay honor to them because it was a very unique program. I also think for the officials who are with us, those who are making decisions, whether they're policy or budgetary, to always have youth involved, whether you have councils, youth and elders on those councils to give you guidance. Like tonight, we've had these two incredible young humans sharing their hearts and their ideas with us, both verbally in our time, but also through their videos. And sometimes those who are making the decisions are far connected from what the issues actually are. And that's why those voices are so important. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Jennifer and Monique, were brilliant and succinct. It's been so good to be with you. And like, it's a real genuine and honest feeling that I feel in terms of just like realizing that we're at the end of our time. I'm a little bit, because I've enjoyed so much your presence. And I really do hope that our paths will cross again. And to everybody that's at home, there's so many things that I'm going to take away from this, and I hope that you feel a similar kind of way. And one of the things that I think I take away from this conversation around resiliency is that, you know, sometimes things aren't always optimal, but there are things that we can do. And there are different ways of looking at things, and there are actions that we can take. You know, when Dwight talks about shifting negative feelings and ideas, you know, I think there's a brilliance there that we can do things. And, you know, there's a way of thinking that says like, oh, if I feel a way, there's nothing I can do. But I think this very clearly, our time together says there is something that we can do. And sometimes that thing is actually caring for another person. You know, when I help an elder across the street, I feel better about myself. You know, when we do virtuous acts for others, it actually makes us feel like we are worthy. We have a role that we can play in this world and society, you know? And so I offer this song to you. It's by a guy named Scott Grace Kallichstein, and it's called Gonna Let Life Move Me. And I just love that idea of little drum, keeping the beat, the rhythm. I love Jennifer's offering around music. Dwight also brought forth this concept of like music and its capacity for healing. You know, and I heard that with Cole just talking about routine, which is also rhythm, you know. And so I'll offer this song to you. We're all on mute anyway, so like if you want, you can just sing along. You're in your own space, but hey, we can do this together. It goes like this. I want to let life move me. I want to let life stir me deep. I want to let life wake me from this ancient sleep. I want to laugh all my laughter. I want to cry all my tears. I want to love the rain as deeply as the sun when it clears. I'll sing that one more time. I want to let life move me. I want to let life stir me deep. I want to let life wake me from this ancient sleep. I want to laugh all my laughter. I want to cry all my tears. I want to love the rain as deeply as the sun when it clears. I wanna love the rain as deeply as the sun when it clears last time. I wanna love the rain as deeply as the sun when it clears. Thank you all so much. I just cannot believe I'm looking at what Sam has offered us. I think we all got to take a look at this. It's amazing. Like, to think that we started off with roughly a blank page, and now, here we have this amazing offering. I'm so excited for you all to see this. Sam, can you share a little bit?
Oh, thank you so much. And so I'll just give us a quick little tour of the beginning, way back when we talked about who helps you love you into existence. And then this reminder of the different kinds of stress. And sometimes it can begin with something positive, but it can also move into the toxic. And then remembering we have all of these different skills and capacities to help us. And we heard from youth, and I've put them in the center of our page here. So Cole and Dwight are going to be right here in the middle to remind us that we need to be guided by people that are the most affected, and listening to youth is super important. And then moving into Monique's story, this idea of kind of like this cliff that we're all kind of here because we have experiences with trauma, but again, the use of art and books and healing and a cultural lens that can help us transform. So thank you again, Monique, for this beautiful offering tonight. And then from the panel, these three areas, the community members can be supported in their own resilience, that youth know what they need. There's some awesome community initiatives that we can build up. And at the very, very top, just that reminder that connection is going to be key to all of it. So connection to place, connection to self, connection to community and culture, like Monique was saying. And with all of that, I just want to say, yeah, connecting to the things that that help you find your passion, whether that's art or something that is soothing or breathing. I think connection it's a simple word, and it is incredibly profound. So that's the intention that I'm going to leave here tonight with. Back to you, Kari.
Sam, thank you so much. Such beautiful work and such deep listening. And so I want to, raise my hands and say thank you to you for that. With that, I just want to again recognize that the Ridge Meadows Community Action Table and its partners helped to put this on: the School District 42, the Community Network, SD42 District Parent Advisory Council, and the Seniors Network. Thank you so much for making this happen, strengthening resilience. I hope you feel strengthened. I hope you feel connected. I hope you feel like you're not alone in a way, that you recognize there are people who care, that see you. And we're actually going to offer you an opportunity to be a part of building community. And that's through a cleanup that's been arranged by the Ridge Meadows Community Action Table. And it's on your screen right now. You can get involved by connecting with I think that's an email there. Yeah, SD42DPAC@gmail, or you can go over to Facebook. And if you put in facebook.com/StopOverdoseRM, you will find yourself on that Facebook page. And I'll just say that it's again, if you even just put in a Facebook search, Stop Overdose Ridge Meadows, you'll be able to find a reference to this again. And also you see there the email SD42DPAC@gmail.com. I also want to honor the fact that, you know what, we're 17 minutes over time. We said that we're going to do this at 8. And for those of you who are able to stick around and stick it out, I just want to say thank you so much. I also know from my teachings and my being around different Indigenous communities that time is a thing that doesn't just exist on clocks. It's there's a different kind of cultural and community understanding for what time is. And I believe that right now, what we have done was perfectly timed. It was perfect length. Nothing felt overdone. Every offering that I witnessed was beautiful. It was blessed. And I'm so glad that we were able to be together. And it is my firm aspiration and desire that we all connect again at some point. I hope our paths cross again. Thank you to all the people on the panel. Thank you, Chad, Jennifer, Monique, Sam, Cole, Dwight, all the people behind the scenes on the tech team, all the people who helped organize this. What you didn't know is that I lit a candle. Sam, thank you. I lit a candle when we first started. And I did that because, this is a very ancient practice. Like, we've been sitting around fires and, Monique, when you shared that youth, one of the things they did to feel good about what was going on was they lit a fire and they just poked the fire for a while. And what you all didn't know is that I lit a fire too, in recognition. And so as we part ways, I'm actually going to blow this candle out and offer a good night to us all. Thank you all so much. Is there anything else? Is there anything that I'm missing? Anything that's burning? Okay, I'm blowing out the candle. Thank you to all of you. Thank you to all the ancestors who joined us through your calling their names, invoking their names. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And with that, a good night.